morning, and welcome to the live stream service of First Unitarian Church of Hobart, Indiana. My name is John Halstead. We are a religious community of people with diverse beliefs and shared values. Our diverse beliefs are expressed in our 6 sources, and our shared values are expressed in our 7 principles, both of which can be found online. Together, we strive to grow spiritually, build community, and live our values in the world. We are currently in search for a full-time minister. When we do not have a minister in the pulpit, we invite members or guests to share a special message with us today. This is one such Sunday. We are fortunate to hear from Dayan Martinez. During this time of COVID, obviously there are many difficulties and many obstacles, but there are also opportunities, and one of those opportunities is that we get to hear from people that we normally wouldn't get to hear from. And Dayan is in Florida and would not be able to come to our congregation under other circumstances, so I'm glad to have him here today. During this time of responsible social distancing, we are striving to maintain the authenticity of our services, so we want to draw attention to several parts of our service today. The bell you heard ringing was our actual church bell, which was recorded by Bob Allen. The chalice, which you will see being lit today, is the actual chalice that we use in our services in front of a green screen of our chapel, which was made possible by James Johnson. The music you hear is recorded each week by our music director, Jeremy Jacobson. We are currently streaming on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. Our service is being recorded and will be made available for future viewing on Facebook, YouTube, and the church website. Thanks to James Johnson and Valerie Lambert for making this possible. We have a couple of announcements today. Right after the service, we will have a congregational meeting to vote on the placement of a Black Lives Matter sign in front of our church. You can stay in this Zoom meeting to participate. We also want to express sadness over the news of the death of Gail Holman, the wife of one of our former ministers, Scott Ossing. Our thoughts and prayers go with Scott and his family. We know that this is a difficult time for everyone during this pandemic, but that it is especially difficult for some people. If you have a need, large or small, even if it's just someone to talk to, please reach out to anyone on this call and we will do our best to help. Please take a deep breath now and join us in a spirit of reverence as we listen to our prelude. Please join us now as we light our chalice. The words are printed on your screen. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. Please join me now as we recite our affirmation of faith. The words are printed on your screen. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament. Service is its prayer. And this is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Please join us now in singing our Doxology. Again, the words are printed on your screen.
Through every land and earth.
speaker today is Dayan Martinez. Dayan was born in Canada and migrated to South Florida at the age of 12, and he has lived there ever since. Though raised Catholic, he found greater joy and meaning in paganism, since weaving through those two spiritualities and others to end up somewhere animistic and in line with UU principles. He's a member of his local UU congregation for the past few years and co-founder of the local county-wide pagan group. Dayan is also an online friend of mine, and I'm glad that he was able to join us today.
Hello, everyone. I don't know if I heard you correctly there, John, but I was actually born in Cuba.
I'm sorry about that.
I've been born in Canada. So, good morning. Yeah, more or less. The topic of my talk today here is making peace with extinction, inspired by a blog post that I created a while ago, which itself was inspired by a class that I gave to my students in middle school science, and noticed by John, and I expanded it for our service here today. So without further ado, let me begin. This is not a call to action, nor is it a surrender. Those words should have been heeded decades ago, before rainforests and brush and tundras burned, before saltwater acidity stunted the growth of shells and corals, before hurricanes cleaved islands in two, before the insects and the birds fell silent, before all life was threatened. Our hands, evolved to minuscule precision, are no longer at the helm of this great habitat. Our feet may pound the pavement, and our mouths may chant pithy slogans, but our ears refuse to listen. It is the time of mass extinction, and this is where we adapt and make peace with endings. More than 50 years ago, our scientists noticed the first signs of a changing planet. Their early models warned that, so long as our industrial society continued to rapaciously burn through fossil fuels and ecosystems, Earth's spheres will become destabilized. These dark prophecies have, by and large, been so far fulfilled in our lifetimes. Humanity's rampage through the natural world spares no forest, spring, estuary, mountaintop, or field. Our mark on the world is an indelible scar writ on the geological scale, a wound done in the name of golden idol prophets. A common measure of this catastrophe, the level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, continues to rise as predicted. In response, monthly temperature records shatter historical highs. Its effects on the ocean, weather, and health worsens every year. A World Wildlife Fund report 2 years ago estimated a decline of 60% of the populations of mammals, birds, fish, reptiles, and amphibians on average in the time that we have witnessed this unfolding catastrophe. About half of the planet's shallow water corals have disappeared, and about a fifth of the Amazon is likewise gone. This was before the catastrophic fires of 2019, which further damaged the area. This does not mean that more than half of the animals alive in 1970 are now gone, but that these collapsing populations signal a new fragility in our world. Almost always, reports show, this change is due to direct human activity, such as indiscriminate use of pesticides, deforestation, poisoning of waterways and wetlands, and the warming planet. Perhaps all this death weighs heavily on our conscience, if it has found expression through our numbed witness of real life, real-time disasters on the screen. Even before I was fully conscious of these morbid truths, I felt the uneasiness that that many of us felt and continue to feel. The year by year quieting of wild voices in our cityscapes as species vanish or adapted to evade human contact. The threat and the retreat of the world from our built environments first came to the fore of my awareness as I entered college in 2003. With all the naivety of youth, helped me believe that what hadn't been fixed in more than 3 decades could still be solved. My university campus was locally known for its burrowing owl population and nearby gumbo limbo trees. It was, in fact, the reason that I chose that university to attend. As a night owl myself, I stayed up late many nights and stalked the grounds in hopes of catching a glimpse of one. When I did, I was ecstatic, sat down at the parking lot curbside to watch it from a distance. By my sophomore year, however, the university logo was changed to crashing waves, despite the apparent popular disapproval of the student body. The next year, rumors were confirmed that the university planned to relocate its burrows somehow and pave over those tracks for more parking space and a new stadium. It was the first time I stood up for the rights of non-human beings, now appalled that their right of life was not respected as much as the rights of pavement and parked cars. Burrowing owls are considered of least concern in the endangered list, which is probably why the university felt safe in the conquest of their meager spaces. Never mind the birds have been here first, and their homes constituted a vital waypoint for an extended corridor stretching hundreds of miles through South Florida. Convenience and recreation, and the implied carbon cost of asphalt, machinery, plastics, etc., superseded a living population. The same cold calculus that led us to remove the peoples of the First Nations from their ancestral homes, to deem the wolf a nuisance fit only for removal, to level entire forests of the eastern woodlands and cut down the lungs of the earth for palm oil and cattle elsewhere. Ecopsychologists theorize that our modern culture, and to some extent, the pre-modern culture that led up to its present form of civilization, handicaps the transference of parental bonds and associations to the natural world in children. It stunts the ecological development of individuals by focusing the formative years of childhood and adolescence towards anthropocentric pursuits, and actively teaches avoidance of nature as a hazardous and inconvenient place. After all, how many of us are not currently vexed by the blazing heat of July and the recent heat wave that gripped the nation in 100-degree temperatures? How many of us have practiced the yoga of staying so still that breath wills itself out of our lungs without moving a muscle? If culture is nothing but the sum of our actions and beliefs, then what do we add up to? We must become witnesses in the biblical sense of St. John's revelation before the healing of peace can commence. We must gain the courage of desperation felt by every human being present in this catastrophic moment of Earth's long history. We must enter the cathedral of grief and face the silent judgment of our moral imperatives for the sake of those we've forgotten to hear. It is a place full of darkness, studded with the sparkle of hopes and reason, a cocoon for potential where our future awaits to be transformed from devastation into something other. Here, we do the work of shadows, crafting the Gnostic prayers of penitent and recording whatever wisdom echoes back from living reality. We return to ourselves. The work I believe we're called to this radical peacemaking with the forces of extinction now unleashed on this planet happens within the mind of each, but also in the fertile, shared mindscape of bioregional populations. We return to the same ecological units all threatened species share because we recognize our place is with them in this struggle. Within ourselves, we maintain accountability for the practice and act out the authentic human nature that developed before domestication. Within our immediate and diverse populations, we receive and implement teachings of wild systems all around us. We develop kinship bonds this way with water and air and seeds, with native species, those arising, and migratory patterns, those passing, that strive toward survival. Extinction will come in stages, like moon phases and tides. Much like the planet's orbiting companion, these changes will be forced upon us and demand an adaptive response from all communities in tandem. As the models predict, the further we are into this so-called 21st century, the more uncompromising the climate disruptions will become. In the end, extinction is unavoidable once the mechanisms are in place. We can hope to work around the edges of this change and thereby survive along with our companion species met on the penitence road. We can make this the practice of our shadow work. What emerges through extinction? What is the landscape of life on Earth beyond this point? There is where I find my daily hope, despite the gulf of chaos that I will journey through in my lifetime. It is a narrow and fragile bridge that carries me through all that is to come, and so my eyes stay fixed on the far horizon. Even if my years are not long enough to reach the other side, what remains of me will undoubtedly find its way to new life in myriad forms, unwitting of their previous selves, as I am of ocean life and the leaves that held this breath. There is a world on the other side of me, however bleak it might be at first. In time, Earth will heal and settle into a new dynamic balance that could, if we're lucky, still have a place for a species of bipedal ape caught between the ashes of its old world and the beckoning stars. To fear the loss of this world proves to be maladaptive in the end. For about 90% of our species' history, we lived as nothing more than just another life form. Crude tools and a mastery of fire barely guaranteed a continued existence, even as it was punctuated by century-long droughts due to glaciations in the distant northern climates and apocalyptic volcanism. Through starvation and struggle, our ancestors encoded the strength to survive on their progeny, and they passed it on to us. It is entirely possible that human civilization will collapse before it manages to unleash its full arsenal of destruction on all life. But we are not merely civilization. We are not the brick and mortar, the rebar and the plexiglass. We are not capital gains or quarterly profits. We are not blips in the stock market of things. We are a drumbeat of lifeblood, a breath of the wild, borrowed from myriad lungs. We are the rain on the plain, the stream, the ocean, coursing through these veins and speaking the voyages through life and ice and storm. We are an innumerable particles that dance on, making life anew in each miraculous form. We are the love of those known and unknown, of families and friends, of compatriots striving as we have for generations. May this be a story of the lessons learned, of overcoming the great sweep of ages. May the story be told of a species that endured. And to that end, I offer this myth. An age ago, the people suffered a great sickness of forgetting. Little by little, they lost their footing on the path of being and wandered far and wide through a world of smoke and mirrors. Unable to see themselves clearly, deceived by the distortions of alienation and superiority, they crafted great wonders of earth and stone and metal. These they raised up towards the sky in desperation and defiance, seeking a glimpse of the path they had forgotten. In time, this quest was all they knew. It became their only definition for worth and purpose, centered so tightly on themselves that they even forgot each other. Suffering followed, as the people cried out and heard back only echoes of their pain. The beings of the world forgot them too and gave up talking. They become a wounded beast, a rational species capable of calculating profit out of mass destruction. Their minds constructed falsehoods to fulfill their desires without relief or sustenance. In their wake, nightmares were carved into the land, wounds only the aged may now heal. It is said that in their last century, an awakening took place. The smoke of devastation cleared and their false mirrors shattered. A few began to remember and retell their stories, reaching out to others and shaking them awake. It was too late to stop the catastrophe then, but they saw that there was time enough to save a remnant of who they could have been all along. As their world fell apart, they banded together and wove the dream of a world to come, a prayer of hope none of them would live to see, but could live on after through the ones to come. Our forebears grew up and passed through a world of vast uncertainty, but great hopes. They carried with them the light of a dream that could not die, lest all people would be left in darkness and without direction. They sought and gained great strength from the memories of those before them, a spiritual line of wise ones stretching back down the ages. When the day came for a new dawn, our people were ready to receive it, rooted in their sacred place of being, kin to storm and earth and all the living. They found others like themselves, survivors, people who had walked the path of being. This is our age, our story, and our hopes for those who hear it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dayan. Your message is very powerful and I think both stark and also very beautiful and hopeful. So now is the time in their service when we take an offering. While the music plays, please consider making a donation to help us continue our online services. The link that you see on the screen is not clickable, but a clickable link will be shared in the chat box. We give to remind ourselves of how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and in sacred space. We give in the faith that together we have enough. reading today is by Ramon Ilani from his essay World's End, which was published at Gods and Radicals Press. Modernity begins with vertiginous motion, where before there was stillness. The ships of the Atlantic slave trade, the steam engines, the textile factories, the collieries, an atomized universe and atomized humanity. The divine and sacred land split apart into resources for consumption. The human being sorted and administered, just another resource to be managed. Time becomes conceived as an arrow rather than a circle. Cycles are disrupted. The seasons, life and death, growth and decay, all disregarded by the engine of progress. 400 years of limitless growth and expansion, all on borrowed time. It was never going to end any other way. The cycles will be restored despite the best efforts and delusions of humanity. We are always looking for the one mistake we have made as a species that's led to all of our problems. This tendency itself is reflective of the modern consciousness, according to which the path of history is linear rather than cyclical. Thus, surrounded by the detritus of so many failed reforms and revolutions, we look back to find the moment that it all went wrong. If only we could frame the problem just so, we think. If only we could put our finger on it, then we could work everything out, and the future would become an endless string of glorious tomorrows. This is error. We are doomed to struggle, as all life is doomed to struggle. But let us never forget that the stars are born and die in fiery cataclysm. To reject the universality of struggle in human life and the fabric of the cosmos is to reject that which ties us to the totality of the more than human world. Please join us now for our closing hymn. We are dancing Sarah's Circle. Sarah's Circle is a reference to the biblical matriarch and her circle of family and friends. As we sing it, think about the words in light of Dayan's message today. Thank you again, Jeremy, for that beautiful rendition of both of those songs. Our closing words come from the poet Robinson Jeffers. Come, little ones, you are no more than the foxes and yellow wolfkins, yet I will give you wisdom. O future children, trouble is coming. The world, as of the present time, sails on its rocks, but you will be born and live afterward. Also a day will come when the earth will scratch herself and smile and rub off humanity, but you will be born before that. Please join me now as we extinguish our chalice. The words are printed on your screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.